It's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales
and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. It's our very first week and thank you for all your lovely messages. If you like what we do tell your mates, won't you? Now we're here for 2 hours of entertaining and honest discussion with my fabulous panel of guests. We've got the midterm American election results emerging. So, Housewife's favourite, Greg Swenson, is here to tell us if Trump is on for a comeback. Emma Burnell, erudite political consultant, and one of the very few left-wing commentators brave enough to appear on GB News. And Tonya Buxton, freedom campaigner, celebrity chef, and mum to a daughter who appeared on a reality show. I can't wait to hear what she thinks of Hancock in the jungle. So, how have Joe Biden and Donald Trump fared in the overnight results emerging from the States? We're going to have all the details in just a moment. And Gavin Williamson is out of government for the third time. Why do today's politicians seem to be let off the hook so easily for moral or behavioural misdemeanours? And the Just Stop Oil lunatics caused a third day of chaos on our roads yesterday. What do our panel make of their antics? And in a world of apathy, is there any part of you which admires their passion to protest? Would you be willing to be arrested for what you believe in? Let me know. GBviews at gbnews.uk. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news with Rosie.
A very good morning. 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. Results for the US midterms are being declared this morning, with some states still too close to call. If the Democrats lose either the House or the Senate, that enables the Republicans to limit President Joe Biden's ability to pass laws. The results out so far show that Republicans are on course to gain control of the House of Representatives. The race for the Senate is on a knife edge. Now, it could be days before the final results are announced because of the high number of postal votes. Well, meanwhile, Donald Trump is expected to announce whether he'll run again to be president. Former White House senior advisor Marissa Magnot Newman says Mr. Trump is surprised by the initial overnight results.
You know, I talked to an advisor that's in Trump's camp who stated very clearly that Donald Trump was disappointed with the results of very key races that he thought that they had in the bag. And so I think that his camp is going to have to go back, regroup, and come up with a new strategy as to how they're going to move forward. Otherwise, he could be very vulnerable in his quest to return back to the Oval Office.
Rishi Sunak will likely be challenged during Prime Minister's questions this afternoon over his decision to make Sir Gavin Williamson a minister despite being aware of a complaint against him. Sir Gavin resigned last night, saying allegations of bullying and his conduct had become a distraction to the good work of government. The MP left his post after further allegations emerged last night. Sir Gavin denies any wrongdoing. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary told GB News Sir Gavin's appointment was a mistake.
Everyone in every walk of life should be abiding by the proper employment procedures and making sure they are acting in the way that we would expect of anybody. And in public life, the bar should be even higher. But I'm afraid with Gavin Williamson, that's a specific case of somebody who should never have been appointed to government, a terrible reflection on the judgment of the Prime Minister, because he was already under investigation for this when the appointment was made. And to me, why these people are appointed to government? Well, it's because that's the Conservative Party, and there's no way any Prime Minister can forge a majority out of what we see in Parliament from the Conservative Party without taking these risks, and that is why they're incapable of providing the stability the country needs.
The NATO chief, Jens Stoltenberg, will visit number 10 Downing Street later, the first international visit since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. The meeting's being seen as a sign of how important Mr Sunak views the role of NATO security as Russia's war in Ukraine continues. The Royal College of Nursing is expected to announce its first national strike action in its 100-year history. The union's 300,000 members were urged to vote for industrial action in a dispute over pay. The results are expected today. The government has said it does have contingency plans for dealing with the strike action. The Cabinet Office Minister Oliver Dowden previously said essential services would be prioritised while other activity will be impacted. 2 people have been arrested and a police officer's been injured after responding to a climate protest on the M25 this morning. Essex Police said there was a collision between a motorbike and 2 lorries in a rolling roadblock that had been imposed because of an activist on the motorway. This is the 3rd day of action on the UK's busiest highway. Just Stop Oil say around 10 of its supporters climbed onto overhead gantries in multiple locations on the M25. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan told GB News protesters are causing mass disruption.
We have COP27 going on. If you are serious and want to be constructive about climate change, about making those changes, then if you are serious about that, you should be going to COP27. You should be constructively engaging with that dialogue, not sticking yourself to parts of the M25.
A leading charity is warning that the cost of living crisis is driving food banks to breaking point with record-breaking levels of need. The Trussell Trust says almost 1.3 million emergency parcels were handed out in 6 months this year, with almost 500,000 going to children. 1 in 5 people referred to its network are from working households. Hundreds of jobs are at risk as Made.com has entered administration and has been sold to the brand Next. The London-based furniture store, which employs around 600 people, didn't say whether any jobs would be saved as part of the deal. The company filed a notice to appoint administrators last week after being hit by soaring costs and slowing customer demand. They've halted new orders and said they're not offering refunds. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it develops. Now back to Bev.
Good morning, this is Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you so much for joining me on my first week. I am delighted today to be joined by Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republican Overseas UK. We're going to talk about all things American politics in just a moment. Emma Burnell, familiar face to GB News viewers, political consultant. And Tonya Buxton, broadcaster. And as I mentioned earlier, the mother of a daughter who went into a reality show. We're going to be talking about what does it mean on a family when somebody does that, like Matt Hancock going into an facility. But it also just gives an excuse to just basically talk about Matt Hancock and what an idiot he is for a bit as well, so we're looking forward to that. I want to hear from you. Get in touch as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, it was meant to be the start of Donald Trump as the comeback kid. Donald was hinting that he'd announce a potential presidential comeback for 2024 off the back of expected big wins last night in both the Senate and Congress for the Republicans. But the scriptwriters apparently thought differently, with a key win for the Democrats in Pennsylvania and possibly Georgia. The Republicans haven't done as well as expected. Even more annoying for Trump, the Florida governor and someone who could well be his main rival, Ron DeSantis, did extremely well. Let's have a listen.
We have embraced freedom. We have maintained law and order. We have protected the rights of parents. We have respected our taxpayers, and we reject woke ideology. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die. Florida has proved that it can be done. We offer a ray of hope that better days still lie ahead.
Ron DeSantis there in Florida with his goddess of a wife by his side. We're going to be bringing you all the states as they're announced this morning. But first of all, Greg Swenson, can you give us an idiot's guide to American politics and why these midterms matter? Biden is not going to leave the White House right now, so why is this relevant?
It's called the midterms because it's the 2 years in between presidential elections. congressmen and women run every 2 years. Senators run every 6. So if you do the math, 1/3 of the Senate runs in the midterms and the presidential years as well. But the Congress, the House of Representatives, runs every 2 years. So the midterms are typically a reflection on the party in power.
How can you make the comparison then for British viewers and how it compares to our political system? So the Senate is more like the upper house, isn't it?
Right.
A bit similar like our House of Lords, except that they are elected in America.
Yes, that is correct. And whereas the House is for the people, basically.
Yeah.
They're constantly running for re-election. And they tend to be elected based on the trend, whereas the Senate is typically based more on the individual candidate and also the state that they're from, whether it's red, blue, or whatever. But the House of Representatives is the people's house, and it really is much more basically are the ups and downs in the House are based on the national trend, and you'll see that in most elections. And most of the time, the party in power does poorly in the midterms. In other words, the opposition party, in this case the Republicans, always do well in the midterms, and it's typically a reflection on the White House. In this case, the White House is doing particularly poorly, and so we expected a much better outcome today because of Biden and because of the current policies.
So in a way, it's the sense in which the American citizens can hold the current leadership to account, hold their feet to the fire a little bit, put a little shot across their bows. I've got many more political metaphors we can throw in here. Right, and that hasn't happened, bizarrely.
No,
Why, Greg?
There's a long list of reasons, but I think a few things quickly. Many of the Republicans were running against Biden and against the Democrats. The country's a mess, and it was caused by Democratic policies. If you look at inflation and the economy, crime, the open border, the education problems, all caused by Democratic and Biden policies. So it's very easy to run against that. The problem is they didn't really articulate what they're running for. Right. And in 1994, we had the contract with America and Newt Gingrich. In 2010, the so-called shellacking that Biden called it, we had the Tea Party. This time around, all we really had was Biden's horrible and the Democrats are woke, and we won't tolerate that. I mean, that was enough for the Republicans to take the House and possibly the Senate. But it wasn't enough to have an overwhelming victory. I think you need more than that. The second thing is, the candidate selection is important. Especially in the Senate where candidates really matter. Those are big races. They cost a lot of money. And I think that the Trump-backed candidates, many of whom were rookies, it was the first time they've run an election. You saw that in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Georgia. They just didn't have the experience. They basically, even the ones who won, like J.D. Vance, have underperformed the governor's race or the other races in that state. And I think that's a reflection on poor candidate selection.
Do we have any idea about voter turnout and whether it is an apathetical votership at the moment?
Great question. I don't have the numbers yet, but I don't think so. I mean, the pre-election polling was really good in terms of voter turnout, and the mail-in voting in Georgia, where remember Jim Crow 2 or Jim Crow on steroids. No, the early voting in Georgia broke all the previous records. So I think turnout was pretty good.
And just also on the postal vote, isn't it the Republicans that normally do better on the postal vote than the Democrats?
No.
Other way around?
Yeah, the other way around.
Told you I needed an idiot.
The Democrats, I mean, part of this is because of the lockdown insanity from 2 years ago. The number of mail-in ballots, went up dramatically because of lockdown. Democrats were more prone to stay home, masked, inside, and not go to the polls. Republicans were much more prone to go to the polls.
Right, okay.
So and that's the problem, is the ballots that are counted late, if they don't start counting the mail-in ballots, that could swing an election. That's what happened in 2020. Republican can be up 3 to 5 points at midnight, and then, at 8 in the morning, they're down by 2.
So right now, as we sit here at 10:13 London time, what are the results going to mean for Biden? Does he retain power in both houses, or has he still lost some?
He's lost the majority in the House and the Senate. Right. So it will be Biden against the Republicans. So the good news is, even though it wasn't the red wave that we'd all hoped for, and it wasn't really a massive statement, the good news is it will limit Biden. It's going to be Republican House. It could be a Republican Senate. It's leaning that way. We don't really know. But the House controls the purse strings. and they will stop Biden from the destructive policies that he executed the first 2 years, at least he won't be able to do more harm.
Emma Burnell, the good news is that Biden will be undermined in terms of his power and what he can do. Do you take that as good news?
No. You'll be amazed to hear. I mean, what's fascinating about this election is that I feel like the Republicans lost it for themselves in many ways. It is absolutely the tradition that the party in power goes backwards significantly in midterms. And it doesn't always mean that there's then going to be the same trend at the next general election.
Which is 2024.
Which is 2024. There were a number of issues, and we are in a situation in which inflation has been running very hot, although I believe things that the things that people see on a day-to-day basis have been calmed in the last month or so. The things like gas prices, petrol prices to you and me, have actually stabilised. So that kind of really visible day-to-day thing has been calmed more recently. So that has been less of an issue just visibly. But still, we are in a very, very, the US is in as difficult an economy as the UK. That would normally indicate that the party should go backwards. There have been a number of issues. I think you're absolutely right about the candidate selection. I think the visibility of Donald Trump, particularly in the last few weeks in the run-up to the election, actually had quite a galvanising effect on the voters he didn't want to galvanise. And then, of course, there is the Roe versus Wade decision in the Supreme Court. And if you look at the gender differential in turnout, then I think that has had a massive effect, particularly in the suburbs, in states that have been trending towards the Democrats recently.
Tanya, can we just talk about Ron DeSantis? And be still my beating heart, right? I mean, look, we've got some stiff competition. Did you see his misses? We got no chance.
No, but I just love them as a couple.
They're amazing,
They're kind of exactly how you would expect American couple to be. I mean, there's no senility there. I don't see any incontinence pants around.
It's a very low bar.
Yeah, exactly. I think that part of the reason that all of this has gone a little bit wrong for the Republicans is because people want Ron DeSantis and they don't want Trump. And Trump coming and speaking up has caused that split in the vote. If Trump hadn't been around, I think we'd have a different result now.
Do you?
Yes.
So do you think, because over the weekend, I mean, we know that Donald Trump, for all of his strengths, one might say, he has a very thin skin, OK? Now, he's not necessarily the kind of man, is he, who's going to say, Ron DeSantis should be my running mate. Let's do it together. Let's be the team. His ego's too big for that, isn't it?
Yeah, far too big.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, President Trump's focus is President Trump, not the party, not winning for the party. Granted, he did try to help some candidates. He did campaign in Pennsylvania and Ohio, but he ended up talking about himself a lot of the time. Ron DeSantis, brilliant, absolutely brilliant candidate. He right out of the movies, Harvard and Yale, Navy SEAL, lawyer, commissioned officer, beautiful wife, fights back to the media. He's very Trump-like in many ways.
3 young children who look great in the pictures.
Of course, and they're all gorgeous.
Low-hanging fruit, isn't it?
And he's 44 years old,
vote.
and he can serve 2 terms, which Trump can't do. So there's a lot of reason to want Ron DeSantis to be president. He's a lot like Trump in many ways.
Yeah.
So the party's changed. So we don't necessarily need Trump to be Trump. We can have Mike Pompeo or Ron DeSantis or Kristi Noem.
But you know what? The sense of injustice from the Trump supporters, that they feel that he had that last election stolen from him. Is that why they're backing him still, do you think, Tanya, over Ron DeSantis?
I do think so. I mean,
sense of justice, no matter how misplaced.
But it is the oddest voting system. I mean, it does need, reinventing, redoing. I mean, this whole thing that you go to bed at night and the Republicans are winning, you wake up in the morning, it's always the Democrats then, and you think, well, this is all coming to postal vote. It feels really dodgy to me.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't feel like it's a correct democratic way. It feels like it's open to be manipulated. That's how it feels to me. But I think the thing about Ron DeSantis is he has the kind of morals and the family sense and everything that's right, but without the kind of outer maddest edge of Trump. And that's why he is the perfect candidate to be president of America. And I really hope he gets it.
It's going to be fascinating to see what happens between the two of them at the very least the next 2 years. Right, we're going to be coming back to that in our second hour as well. But first of all, Gavin Williamson here, he lost his government job under 3 different prime ministers. Amazingly, he kept getting the job back in the first place. Where is the integrity that Rishi Sunak promised? We're going to try and find out after the weather.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Sunny spells for many today. There are some showers around, but many places won't see them and stay dry, and it is less windy than it has been. Although don't get used to that. More low pressure systems ganging up out in the Atlantic. Very mild and windy for the next couple of days. Out there today, there are a couple of weather fronts just really bringing a few more showers to certain parts of the UK. So northern England, South Wales, southwest England, a few showers perhaps drifting into the Midlands later this afternoon. Certainly plenty of showers coming in across northern Scotland. But in between these showery zones, many places will stay dry and bright with some good spells of sunshine. It is a little breezy, but nothing like what we've seen of late. It's still pretty mild as well, with temperatures above average, but again, it is going to get milder still as we go towards the end of the week. Tonight we'll see more rain coming into western Scotland, a pretty wet night here. Elsewhere, some drizzly and damp conditions over the hills of Wales and northwest England. But for many, it'll be a dry night, predominantly cloudy nights. We could dip down to single figures early on, but generally by dawn, most places will be in double digits. A windy day then to come on Thursday, a mostly dry and cloudy day. The main exception to that will be the northwest of Scotland, where it'll be very windy, but also very wet. That rain really building up, particularly for Skye and Lewis. Apart from a bit of drizzle elsewhere over hills, many places will be fine, and across East Anglia in the southeast, reasonably bright. And everywhere it is going to be mild, with temperatures 15, 16, perhaps 17 degrees Celsius. But it will be blustery, gusty winds, especially in the far northwest, where the rain will pep up once more on Thursday evening, perhaps pushing into parts of Northern Ireland too. Again, for most of England and Wales, staying largely dry, but it will continue to be blustery as we head into Friday. Into the weekend, the winds ease, which means it could turn quite foggy, and all the while it stays very mild.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Good morning, it is 10:23. You are with Bev Turner today on GB News. Now, some business experts will say that you need to get fired at least once in your career, claiming that it's character building. But Gavin Williamson now has the honour of being removed from office by not one, not two, but three Prime Ministers. So why was he still in government when Rishi Sunak promised to bring integrity to his administration? Gavin Williamson is not the only one, of course, who's been fired before. Current Home Secretary Suella Braverman was kicked out by Liz Truss for using her personal emails. Priti Patel was fired by Theresa May for failing to mention important meetings before being brought back by Boris. It's not just the Conservatives, of course. Here are some of what The Guardian reported about Gordon Brown's behaviour back in 2009. The Prime Minister, 58, has hurled pens and even a stapler at aides, according to one. He also says he once saw the leader of Britain, 61 million people, shove a laser printer off a desk in a rage. Another aide was warned to watch out for flying Nokias when he joined Brown's team. Now, of course, we do have to say that Sir Gavin Williamson denies any accusations of bullying. Emma, let me come to you first. It's a depressing catalogue of depravity and a complete lack of moral values. I don't want to sound like Mary Whitehouse 2022, but these sorts of antics bring out my inner matron. I just want to knock all their heads together. Why do they get away with it?
Because they can. Because quite clearly Rishi Sunak felt that he needed Gavin Williamson inside the tent doing it outwards, to put it politely, rather than outside. Gavin Williamson has been quite open, I believe, with colleagues about his fairly kind of skullduggery approach to being a whip, to being a politician. He thinks that he revels in that phrase, the dark arts, rather than thinking, well, maybe we should not be behaving like that if we're going to be in charge of the country and acting properly. For me, as much as the question about why he's been brought into government, and that sometimes is low politics, why was he knighted? Why was he made a Knight of the Realm? That is just completely, baffling to me. You could absolutely get away with not knighting someone like Gavin Williamson without anyone going, oh, I wonder why Gavin Williamson hasn't been given a knighthood.
Amazing. I mean, Tonya, it beggars belief, doesn't it? Particularly that knighthood came after the pandemic when he got sacked for making such a hash of the GCSE and A-level situation.
OK, so I don't want to be the one that always goes back to the gossip, but all it says to me is that he's got stuff on everyone. And so they gave him a knighthood to shut him up. They gave him, Rishi put him in his office in order to shut him up. And it feels like it's all about kind of keeping him appeased so he doesn't start blurting his mouth. That's what it feels like.
I know.
If you're non-political and looking in, that's what you see. And he is a prime example of not leading by example.
You see, looking at the text messages that got him into trouble this week as well, that he was sending to Wendy Morton, and they were talking about the funeral, the fact that he hadn't been invited to the Queen's funeral, OK? So he says, very poor how the Privy Councillors who aren't favoured have been excluded from the funeral, very poor, and sends a very clear message. And Wendy Morton goes back and says, this is not the case, Gavin. And he says, well, it certainly looks it, which is very... a short word, starts with an S, and perception becomes reality. And then it's this line that chills me. Also, don't forget, I know how this works, so don't puss me about. I mean, what? Greg, just help me explain this. Is it the same in America?
It seems very petty. It sounds
doesn't
like,
it?
You know, a couple of young teenagers arguing about who got invited to the party or whatever. It's silly. I'd like to think that people or politicians would always take the moral high road. And we were talking about DeSantis, you know, he's squeaky clean, that's great. But I'd rather have competence too, you know. So if someone is incompetent and shortchanged, in his case, you know, shortchanged the children and made mistakes, not necessarily on purpose, but if you're incompetent, you should get fired or you should resign. And so don't wait for some silly argument about tickets to a funeral.
Well, yeah, you've got a double whammy here, haven't you? You've got incompetence and he's immoral. I mean, yeah.
I would fire everybody who
and so self-entitled. The idea that he's making this fuss about the Queen's funeral, it's just... Have no sense of self-awareness, man?
Is it just also that there's a very small number of people who work in politics and it is a locked-down boys' club? The women do get in a bit more. Obviously, we've got a decent cabinet at the moment. But is it just that there are so few to choose from? Like, did anybody ever say to you when you were growing up, Tonya, you could work in politics?
Never. Never been said to me. But now, let me tell you what lockdown did for me. I was ignorance was bliss for me. And I actually thought MPs and politicians were clever people, bright people who wanted the best for us. Lockdown proved that completely wrong. And the big thing that stood out for me is how stupid and dim-witted most of the politicians are. They live in this bubble, they're entitled, and they don't actually know what they're doing. And I think you and I should take over, Bev.
Oh, you're joking. You'd have to work with these jokers every day, though, don't you? But you know what? It's not a terrible idea, but my ex-husband tried to stand as a Conservative MP, actually, and he tried to stand as an MEP. So I got to watch it from the sidelines, and I spent a lot of time at drinks parties like this, drinking warm white wine in the corner going, oh, my God, this is a room. Oh. And I'd have a lot of Conservative men come up to me and say, so are you a housewife then? Like, it was genuinely like going back in time. It was the most extraordinary insight, though, into how it works. The whole system needs changing, doesn't it, Greg, somehow, so that state school kids can get into politics and we're inspired to be involved and to make a difference. What happens? At some point, it just becomes too difficult to break through.
Yeah, and it's the same thing in the U.S. with the elite schools. If you look at, the Supreme Court, for example, or the Circle in Washington, the people that are running these bureaucratic agencies and are not necessarily elected officials, but the inner circle of Washington, all from the same schools, all from the same bubble. They don't really think, they don't know anybody in the Midwest. They don't know anybody outside of their own little bubble.
Don't you think you should have worked something before you can be a minister of it, before you can be in charge of it? You should have had some practical working. I mean, these kind of career politicians, that's where it's going all wrong.
Yeah.
They've not worked in the real world.
I mean, look, we should point out, Liz Truss, of course, went to state school, but she is the exception that proves the rule, right? OK, we're going to move on, guys. Thank you so much. Now, we've got to take a quick break. But speaking of integrity, Matt Hancock is about to step into this celebrity jungle. What can we expect? That's after your morning news.
A very good morning. It is 10:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Results for the US midterms are being declared this morning, with some states still too close to call. If the Democrats lose either the House or the Senate, that enables the Republicans to limit President Joe Biden's ability to pass laws. Results out so far show that the Republicans are on course to gain control of the House of Representatives. The race for the Senate is on a knife edge. It could be days before the final results are due because of the high number of postal votes. Rishi Sunak will likely be challenged in the Commons today during Prime Minister's questions after the Cabinet Minister, Sir Gavin Williamson, resigned last night. Sir Gavin said allegations of bullying and his conduct are becoming a distraction to the good work of the government. The MP left his post after further allegations emerged last night. Sir Gavin denies any wrongdoing. The Prime Minister will face questions during PMQs this afternoon over his decision to make Sir Gavin a minister, despite being made aware of a complaint against him. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, said Sir Gavin did the right thing.
There's a lot of things that the government has to navigate, a lot of difficult things, not only climate change, the war in Ukraine, but of course those economic challenges that he was talking about. So I think, it's probably he's done the right thing by saying it will be a distraction and he'll go to the backbenches to fully engage with that independent process.
The Royal College of Nursing is expected to announce its first national strike action in its 106-year history. The union's 300,000 members were urged to vote for industrial action in a dispute over pay. The results are expected today. The government has said it has contingency plans for dealing with the action. A police officer has been injured after responding to a climate protest on the M25 this morning. Essex Police said there was a collision between a motorbike and two lorries in a rolling roadblock that had been imposed because an activist was on the motorway. This is the third day of action on the UK's busiest road. Just Stop Oil says around 10 of its supporters climbed onto overhead gantries in multiple locations on the M25 this morning. 2 arrests have been made. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. It's GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip
of the iceberg. And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good morning, it's 10:34. You're watching Bev Turner Today on GB News. Thank you for your messages. One viewer has said, I think it's the time to get a young candidate, no more octogenarians. This is in relation to the American elections. Ben has said, I'd rather have Ron DeSantis than Trump. A lot of you echoing that particular view. Although this contact, you are anonymous on email, do give us your name. Trump voted for DeSantis and called him a good man. Stop exaggerating things for clicks. Well, anonymous viewer, I should also tell you that over the weekend Trump called him Ron DeSanctimonious, didn't he, Greg? So,
yeah.
You know, anyway, right, it is 10:35, as I say. Now, we've had enough of Matt Hancock appearing on our screens every evening during the pandemic, but sadly his only punishment will be whatever the I'm a Celebrity producers have in store for him, amid some rumours in the press today that fellow celebrities could challenge the former Health Secretary over his COVID policies, although I will believe that when I see it. Last night, his entry to the jungle was teased. For listeners on the radio, we're showing some footage of this now, Matt Hancock's teeth. Ugh. And for TV viewers, I can only apologise because it's Matt Hancock putting on his hat, his Australian jungle hat, and his red gilet, looking extremely cheesy, taking off his hat and smiling menacingly to the camera.
My breakfast is coming up, Bev.
Tonya Buxton said that her breakfast is repeating on her. So are you looking forward to seeing Mr. Integrity in the jungle? Tonya, I'll come to you first, as you look like you're about to vomit. I have no words for this.
There is no words. The man is vile, he's moronic, he's stupid. He has no self-awareness. He has no understanding of how hated and despised he is for what he did to us during lockdown. He is the most despicable, vile man. The fact that he put a book out and thinks anybody's interested. The fact that, didn't he give himself a job by the UN, but he didn't actually get it? He has no sense of awareness, and he should not be there, and he should be sacked from politics and never be allowed in again.
Emma Burnell, as a Labour voter, do you love it when Conservative MPs do things as stupid as this?
I think that as a nation, we should all offer Matt Hancock a real vote of thanks, because we live in such polarised times, you know, left versus right, woke versus conservative. And, you know, the one thing that we can really all come together on is Matt Hancock is a great big wally.
You nearly swore that, Emma Burnell.
So close, so close.
Just to let our viewers know, during the ad break, we were talking about how we could possibly discuss this without swearing, and Emma said it's a bit like when she's going to her grandmother's house and she'd get all the swearing out in the car before she arrived there. Greg, we're laughing and it is funny, but it's deeply disturbing because there are people whose lives, I mean, in terms of the NHS and prioritising COVID above all else, you know, people who had their cataracts operations delayed, lost their sight because of the decisions of this man.
If he had any self-respect, he would change his name and move to Australia, not just do a TV show. The fact that he's out in the public and being, it's just outrageous. Mm. And, you know, he's made some bad decisions personally, but it's really the decisions that he made for the people of this country that he should be banished.
And shouldn't Rishi Sunak, his statement was, I'm disappointed in Matt Hancock's decisions. Yes. Well, come on. You can do better than that. You are meant to be his boss. How dare you just say you were disappointed?
As I said, forget about his poor decisions. Just focus on the wreckage that was caused by his policies.
The disrespect to the British public.
That's right.
That's what makes my blood boil.
To be fair to Rishi Sunak, not a sentence you're going to hear from me very often, I'm sure. Matt Hancock has lost the whip.
Yeah.
To be less fair to Rishi Sunak, let's see how long that lasts.
Yeah,
as soon as he
quite.
needs that vote.
Tanya, the other thing that I keep thinking about is the effect on his family. OK, he had this hideous, the worst possible scenario you can imagine as a wife, in that her husband was caught on CCTV going out on telly every day saying, don't mix with your family, don't go to funerals, don't go to weddings. And then he's caught snogging his aide on camera, right? The day before the Sun broke that story, he was at Sports Day holding his wife's hand. She did not know that was coming.
She did not know.
What happens when your family enter the spotlight of a reality show? Because your beautiful daughter, Antigone, was on Love Island.
She was.
And was that a big decision for you as a family?
It was a huge decision as a family. Actually, when they first approached her, because it's quite a long process, and they approached her, she didn't sign in for it. We didn't tell her dad. We didn't tell anyone. We just thought, OK, look, let's do this and see how we go. And because I know my child, and I know the way she's brought up, and I know what she's like, and I know that you were a fan of...
Yeah, she was fabulous.
She was a good girl, because she's a good girl. And so, we decided together that, she's a musician, she wanted... Listen, if she'd found love there, if someone gorgeous had walked in for her, that would have been great. But it didn't. But what it did do, it gave her the platform for her music, because she's a musician. But I know her character. I mean, we're all sitting here waiting now, because we know Matt Hancock's character. He is the person that... He has blood on his hands, OK? And his wife had to deal with all of that. But then his wife and children now having to deal with the reality. It's a whole other ballgame. We had a spotlight put on us when Antigone was on Love Island. My husband loved it because he was the hot dad. But my two youngest, my boys did not like it at all.
Really?
No, yeah, they didn't.
Look, we're looking at Hot Paul there on the TV.
There you go. Yeah, he was hot dad. He loved that.
Work,
My
lady.
God, thank you. I picked well. It's taken me 30 years to get him in that show.
I don't think Matt Hancock's going to come out looking anything like that.
You do have a spotlight on you, and you have to take in how your family are going to deal with it. And I don't know how Martha is going to deal with it, because she has had so much awfulness just reaped upon herself because of this stupid, idiotic man.
And this is the problem. It's expensive.
Yeah.
And he's going to come out with a lot of money, Emma.
He is going to come out with money, although he keeps sort of vaguely promising to give some of it.
Yeah, right.
Never actually a named figure to various charities. But, this is the problem with any decision like this, is it doesn't just impact you. And that's whether you go into politics or whether you go into reality television or anything that you do, the people around you, it has an impact on. And there are, we're all going to spend 2 days or 2 weeks, depending how long he lasts, absolutely pillorying Matt Hancock. And quite rightly, because the man deserves nothing but opprobrium and our laughter and our sneering. But his kids don't, and that does worry me.
Absolutely. Greg, do you have any parallels from the States? Would a politician in America be allowed to do this while being a sitting politician?
They could do whatever they want, so the answer is yes, but they would be humiliating themselves. Matt Hancock doesn't seem to bother.
Like Dancing with the Stars. I'm trying to think whether you've had...
And it's embarrassing. I mean, remember, President Trump was a reality TV host or whatever.
Yes, of course.
So it doesn't mean that it can happen or it's illegal, but it's just embarrassing. Why would you do that to yourself? I mean, so he doesn't seem to have any shame. Maybe he is doing it for the money so he can take care of his soon-to-be ex-wife. Who knows? But it's really silly. And
I don't think he is, though, do you, Greg? I mean, he's got such...
Am I giving him too much credit?
Yeah, I think you are.
He's got his book coming out this Christmas.
Can't wait to buy it. Gifts for everybody. Pandemic
Diaries, I believe it's called.
It is what I don't get. It's been ghosted. How did you ghost a diary?
That's Ghosted by Isabel Oakeshott. Yes. It's a very good point, actually. And also, Matt Hancock, I don't know whether you know this at home, but he has an app. You can download the Matt Hancock app and you can be woken every day with a message from Matt.
Exactly. But that's exactly... He has no sense of how despised he is. He has absolutely no sense of self-awareness. The public despise him. It doesn't matter what side of the political agenda you come from.
Does he have any friends, do you think?
I don't think he has.
He can't have anyone who gives him good advice.
No real man could be friends with him.
Well, our view, you know, guys, our viewers are agreeing with all of you. Nick has said this man is a disgrace to the British public after his time as health minister telling everyone to stay away from each other. Yet at the same time, he has his face stuck to his aide's face on camera. He should be sacked immediately. These politicians are closer to the gutter than the top shelf. Stuart said, I'm sure Hancock will receive a knighthood after his appearance in the jungle. I'm sure he thinks he's going to receive a knighthood, but I don't think he will. Honestly, nothing would surprise me. David said, I just hope the celebrity jungle crew have vaccinated all the insects and reptiles in the camp before Hancock goes in. John said he will not be missed. Odious, arrogant, narcissistic and all-round bullying, slimy human being. Messed up defence, messed up education, rewarded with a knighthood. First politician to ever mess up no portfolio. That's not about Matt Hancock, that's about Gavin Williamson. So anyway, listen, my advice would be, if you don't agree with Matt Hancock being in the jungle, don't watch it. You know what's on at 9 o'clock? Dan Wootton on GB News. And that is always entertaining every day of the week. Right, now, change of gear. Amazingly, suicide remains the biggest killer of men in the UK, according to the Office for National Statistics. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Mental health in men is more lethal than cancer or road accidents. Why? Well, it is a huge issue that probably doesn't receive enough attention. So, thankfully, there's a new initiative called the Global Boyhood Initiative, aimed at encouraging boys to talk about their feelings and speak out against inequality. It's also November, of course, and we have Movember, where lots of men grow their moustaches, and to encourage lots of blokes to talk about mental health issues. Greg, whenever I hear that statistic about suicide being the biggest killer of men, I think it is under 45, where have we gone wrong? Where have we gone wrong? We're failing boys and men.
Yeah, I think we are. And the trend in the West has been to emasculate men and emasculate boys. So, you know, should they talk about their feelings more? Of course, with their parents, preferably if they have a male role model. And that's another issue that should be addressed about the causes of mental health and crime and other social ills, is the higher rate of out-of-wedlock birth rates. You've got the education system teaching children this garbage that you know, CRT and you're racist if you're white, and all kinds of you know, other, you know, all the trans stuff. They've also convinced these poor children that there's a existential climate crisis and they're going to all die a fiery death when they're 40 years old. Why would you want to hang around for 40 years if you know you're going to? So I think there's a lot more to this than feelings.
But the thing is, and I do know what you're saying, and yes, I do think we have, in our feminist intentions, we have, and all of that is great, of course it is, but part of that discussion, we failed to think about the impact that would have on what it meant to be a man. Emma, do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the joys of feminism, and I'm a very proud feminist, is that it's expanded the ways in which you can be a woman. The ways, I mean, I'm not talking about the trans thing, because as you may know, I am not a believer that you can change sex. What I believe is that your sex doesn't define all of the things that you can do and the ways that you can and should behave. And I think one of the great things is that women are not confined to certain roles anymore. What I think has been sadly left behind is that men still do feel very trapped in certain positions, certain ways of feeling, certain ways of behaving. And I think it's really important that we separate a celebration of masculinity from the toxic masculinity and the idea that men have to be put in these very small stereotypical boxes and behave in very small stereotypical ways, because actually a really joyous masculinity can really encompass so much more than that.
Let me tell you a little story. So when my firstborn, who's now 19, was a baby, and I was straight out of university, not straight out of university, but my background was in literature and English, and I'd studied feminist literature, and that was a big part of who I was. So the idea that you are not born a woman, you become a woman, okay, the very Simone de Beauvoir, Germaine de Greer school of thought. And I very much had these arguments with my mother, where I would say, I'm not going to make my son be macho, I'm going to dinner. If he wants to hoover the carpet, I'm OK with that. You know, it's all very old-fashioned stuff now. It's only less than 20 years ago. And I said, I'm not going to buy my son a gun, right? Everyone's playing with guns. And I said, well, every stick he picked up, he tried to shoot me with, right? He had this in him, this hunter-gatherer, whatever you want to call it. He wanted to be... One day, he bit a Jacob's cream cracker into the shape of a gun and tried to shoot me with it from his high chair. And at that point, I thought, I'm just buying him a gun. Like, I have to surrender to it. And now, having raised boys and girls, as you do, Tanya, I realise there is a genetic, biological, imperative difference. And when we neglect that, we cause these sorts of mental health problems.
But it's exactly that. You just can't wipe out years of evolution and what it is to be a boy and what it is to be a girl. I mean, I was exactly the same as you. So my first was a girl. I was determined that she wasn't going to be girly, that she was going to wear, you know, be a tomboy and be kind of have both.
No pink, right?
To the point, let me tell you how much I got that wrong. I used to do a dark wash, a white wash and a pink wash. She completely, Antigone, completely refused to wear anything but pink.
Exactly.
You cannot do that. And what they've done is slowly undermine what it is to be a boy. Slowly undermine what it is to be a man. Chivalry has gone, so they don't know how to behave anymore.
Yeah.
They're so confused. And I know, because I've got, you know, a son that's dating at the moment, whatever, they're so confused as to what they're being told they should be and actually what girls want. Girls do want, you know, a good man. So I'm not talking about someone that's roughish or whatever, but you want a good man, you want a chivalrous man, you want someone who's going to be protective of you. That's what you want as a girl. And kind. But they're being told that they have to be wet and, you know, kind of like kowtow to whatever, you know, thing that a woman says, or don't open the door for me. What, do you think I can't open it myself? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, we've messed them up, Emma, as feminists in the last 20 years. Somehow it went wrong.
I would take the idea that it's all women's fault once again.
Yeah, that's like... a good point. Well, it isn't all women's fault.
I mean, what's more emasculating than being told it's not even men's fault when they get it wrong? I think, yeah, there are... I don't necessarily want someone to protect me because I'm pretty hardcore and I can protect myself. But I do want someone who's kind because I think I'm kind and I want someone who matches my values. I want someone I can have a really genuine, strong partnership with. And this is why I'm single, I can't find them. But
you know what? Strong man. I mean, that someone you feel that I like that feeling of feeling safe, and I am a very powerful, strong, argumentative.
I feel safe without a bloke around. I want someone who can challenge me. I want someone who wants to challenge me, and I think sometimes they confuse chivalry with being unchallenging.
And look, what did feminism aim to do? It aimed for equality.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that's the word that's missing from this conversation. We wanted equal pay. We wanted equal opportunities in the workplace. And what we never talked about, and none of those feminists who were writing and setting that academic theory which has trickled down to society, do you know what they never talked about, Greg? They never talked about men helping at home.
Right.
They never, and most of them were never women, never mothers. That's the amazing thing. There were very few mothers in that conversation, and what happens is there weren't really, if you think about it.
No, I mean,
Sylvia Plath, quite in the oven. Like, she was one of the few
Sylvia
mothers.
Plath was a poet rather than an academic feminist. I think if you look at people like, say, Suzanne Moore, for example, an awful lot of what she talks about is exactly that domestic end of the feminism. There's a wonderful book called The Woman's Room by Marilyn French, which is a really, really useful novel, a treatise on feminism. And she has this phrase about what it's really all about. And the first word I can't say on GBNews, but it starts with an S, and we referred to it earlier. S and string beans. And actually, that sharing of domestic life and parenting and work life, and making sure that everybody gets to play their role and have their balance and feel healthy and happy doing so.
But we've gone wrong, because look at what's happening to our boys, and to our sons, and to our men. Something has gone wrong in that, because they don't feel that they're able to be masculine without being called toxic, and so they've got nowhere to go. They want to be able to talk about their feelings, but I think feelings should be spoken about within a closed environment. Hopefully you've got a family that you can talk to.
But the challenge is,
said earlier.
And the challenge, though, is Greg, is getting the boys to open up to family. That's the challenge. Teenage boys don't talk to anybody.
Well, they grunt. There's
they do.
grunting phase where, you know, you ask an intelligent question and you just get like a one-word answer back, and where the girls sometimes will talk your ear off.
Oh, yeah.
Higher drop. You know, so,
I have a nephew and a niece. I don't have kids. I've got a nephew and a niece, and I'm really because I'm cool aunt.
Yeah.
So I've always said my deal with my sister is, they come to me if they need to talk to someone, and I won't necessarily tell you because you need them to have that safe space.
Yes.
And that's great. And I'm delighted to say my 18-year-old nephew Dylan is wonderful and actually does talk to me and can do a lot more than grunt. But it is really hard, and we do need to do much more to make sure that we do separate that toxicity from masculinity, and that we can celebrate the masculine without then celebrating the worst elements of, in the same way, in the worst elements of femininity.
What? Sorry, Greg. I just want to ask you, as our honorary man today, what role do you think this has played in boys' mental health? Tech. They have addictive personalities, and if they're not addicted to chopping wood or going out and killing bison, they're getting addicted to these.
It's enormous, and it distracts from that time where I always talk about carpooling. When in the American suburbs, that's your time with your children, is when you're picking them up or driving them to practice. It's usually sports related, boys and girls. And as I said, the girls will talk your ear off the entire drive, and then the boy. But you have to be patient. Right, and patience is important because you don't know when they're going to talk. Right, so if it's a 30-minute drive, you might not talk for the first 20, but you just have to be patient and know that that's perfectly normal for boys to grunt or not say anything. And let's not try to change that too much. Just be patient. But the phones and the screens, we don't even know the outcomes of this yet, because it's really the first generation that's had that. So, I'm all for parents enforcing kind of
and I think
guidelines on
what I think the boys do as well is, maybe in the absence of good, strong, kind male role models, be that in the family home, as you were mentioning, Greg, or just be that in the classroom, we do not have enough male teachers, or be that in blooming politics, we've just been talking about that, they go online and they look for men who will represent them, and that's where they end up looking, where they do come across some pretty misogynistic and sexist material, that from which, the stuff I don't want my son to learn about how to treat women, that he will see online.
Absolutely, and if you don't have the male role model, you turn to other sources, and that's one of them. It's not the only one, but it's one of them.
If they don't have the example, that's what it is.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's a breakdown of a family. If families want more there, and you've got good role models, and they don't have to look.
I didn't have to say much to my son. That kind of male communication.
But I think that male teaching thing is really a really important point too, because I do think it's been far too long we've considered teaching to be part of that extension of the women's nurturing role. And actually, those male role models in school can be really important for girls too. A couple of my favourite teachers growing up were men, and they were fantastic role models for me.
Thanks, guys. Okay, right, a couple of your views here. We were talking about the presidential elections. We are going to be revisiting those in the next hour with Greg. I'm going to get you do some homework in the break, Greg. Work out what's going on. Bring back Trump now, says Nick. Biden is the worst president since I was born. That last election was rigged. We know it. I wish he was Prime Minister here in the UK. The channel would be blocked by our Navy. No messing around. And Granville has said regarding protesters climbing gantries on the M25, why not just leave them there and let the traffic flow as normal? Well, we're going to be talking about that in just a moment, aren't we? This Just Stop Oil lot. Will they ever stop being a pain to absolutely everyone? But is there a little bit of you that admires them standing up for what they believe in? I know it's a bit controversial. That's all coming up next. First, the weather.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Sunny spells for many today. There are some showers around, but many places won't see them and stay dry, and it is less windy than it has been. Although don't get used to that. More low pressure systems ganging up out in the Atlantic. Very mild and windy for the next couple of days. Out there today, there are a couple of weather fronts just really bringing a few more showers to certain parts of the UK. So northern England, South Wales, southwest England, a few showers perhaps drifting into the Midlands later this afternoon. Certainly plenty of showers coming in across northern Scotland. But in between these showery zones, many places will stay dry and bright with some good spells of sunshine. It is a little breezy, but nothing like what we've seen of late. It's still pretty mild as well, with temperatures above average, but again, it is going to get milder still as we go towards the end of the week. Tonight we'll see more rain coming into western Scotland, a pretty wet night here. Elsewhere, some drizzly and damp conditions over the hills of Wales and northwest England. But for many, it'll be a dry night, predominantly cloudy night. We could dip down to single figures early on, but generally by dawn, most places will be in double digits. A windy day then to come on Thursday, a mostly dry and cloudy day. The main exception to that will be the northwest of Scotland, where it'll be very windy, but also very wet. That rain really building up, particularly for Skye and Lewis. Apart from a bit of drizzle elsewhere over hills, many places will be fine, and across East Anglia in the southeast, reasonably bright, and everywhere it is going to be mild, with temperatures 15, 16, perhaps 17 degrees Celsius. But it will be blustery, gusty winds, especially in the far northwest, where the rain will pep up once more on Thursday evening, perhaps pushing into parts of Northern Ireland too. Again, for most of England and Wales, staying largely dry, but it will continue to be blustery as we head into Friday. Into the weekend, the winds ease, which means it could turn quite foggy, and all the while it stays very mild.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
And online,
we're proud to be
the People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. We're here until midday with more debate from my fantastic panel. Slightly shorter this hour, of course. We've got PMQs at 11:45, so let's get into it. Coming up, do you stand up for what you believe in? The Just Stop Oil protesters do, but at what cost to us all? And I'm not just talking about blocked roads. We're going to be talking down the line to a Just Stop Oil protester. And is Donald Trump's proposed comeback in trouble before it has even started? America has been voted in the midterms. Is there as much support for Donald Trump as he thinks? That's all coming up after a look at the latest news.
One minute past 11. Good morning, I'm Rosie, keeping you up to date. Now, King Charles has had eggs thrown at him as huge crowds have gathered in York during a royal visit. Let's go live to the scene. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker is there, who witnessed the incident. Cameron, what happened?
Yes, Rosie. Well, the King and Queen consorts just arrived here at Micklegate Bar, this 12th century tower, where they were being officially welcomed to the city of York. But as the King and Queen consorts got out of the car and made their way towards the tower, a young male protester threw eggs at their majesties. Now, every single egg appeared to miss, luckily, and the crowds actually booed the protester, and chants of "God Save the King" was heard. That was very much the dominant theme here in the crowd at York here. Police attempted to dive on this particular protester and had to physically carry carry him away from the scene. As for the King and Queen, they were rushed very quickly off through the gate here in York. They're expected to stay a lot longer and actually greet members of the public, but they have been rushed on towards York Minster, where they're expected to attend a service and then unveil a statue of the late Queen Elizabeth II. So a very small incident, perhaps not the start they were anticipating here in York, but there's several more engagements later on today.
Cameron, thank you very much. Our raw reporter there in York covering that visit for us. Now, results for the US midterms are being declared this morning, with some states still too close to call. If the Democrats lose either the House or the Senate, that enables the Republicans to limit President Joe Biden's ability to pass laws. Results out so far show that Republicans are on course to gain control of the House of Representatives. The race for the Senate is currently on a knife edge. Now, it could be days before the final results are announced because of the high number of postal votes. Well, meanwhile, attention's on Donald Trump, who's expected to announce whether he'll run again to be president. The former White House senior advisor, Omarosa Magnot-Newman, says Mr. Trump is surprised by the initial results.
You know, I talked to an advisor that's in Trump's camp who stated very clearly that Donald Trump was disappointed with the results of very key races that he thought that they had in the bag. And so I think that his camp is going to have to go back, regroup, and come up with a new strategy as to how they're going to move forward. Otherwise, he could be very vulnerable in his quest to return back to the Oval Office.
Rishi Sunak will likely be challenged during Prime Minister's questions shortly over his decision to make Sir Gavin Williamson a minister, despite being aware of a complaint against him. Sir Gavin resigned last night, saying allegations of bullying and his conduct had become a distraction to the good work of the government. The MP left his post after further allegations emerged last night. Sir Gavin denies any wrongdoing. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary told GB News Sir Gavin's appointment was a mistake.
Everyone in every walk of life should be abiding by the proper employment procedures and making sure they are acting in the way that we would expect of anybody. And in public life, the bar should be even higher. But I'm afraid with Gavin Williamson, that's a specific case of somebody who should never have been appointed to government, a terrible reflection on the judgment of the Prime Minister, because he was already under investigation for this when the appointment was made. And to me, why these people are appointed to government? Well, it's because that's the Conservative Party, and there's no way any Prime Minister can forge a majority out of what we see in Parliament from the Conservative Party without taking these risks, and that is why they're incapable of providing the stability the country needs.
The NATO chief, Jens Stoltenberg, will visit number 10 Downing Street later. It's the first international leader since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister to have a visit. The meeting's being seen as a sign of how important Mr. Sunak views the role of NATO security as Russia's war in Ukraine continues. The Royal College of Nursing is expected to announce its first national strike action in its 106-year history. The union's 300,000 members were encouraged to vote for industrial action in a dispute over pay. The results are expected today. The government has said it has contingency plans for dealing with the walkouts. The Cabinet Office Minister Oliver Dowden said essential services would be prioritised while other activity would be impacted. 2 people have been arrested and a police officer has been injured after responding to a climate protest on the M25 this morning. Let's speak to our national reporter, Theo Chakumba, who's there for us. Theo, just explain what happened this morning.
Yes, it's the third day of slow traffic here on the M25. Just over my right shoulder is Junction 2, heading towards Dartford Tunnel. Anti-clockwise, it's not moving at all. Cars moving at around 10 miles an hour or even completely standstill, as you may be able to see. Just might add this as well, a High Court injunction has been granted to prevent Just Stop Oil protesters on the M25. It means that anyone who does put themselves on a gantry will be given a fine and can be held in contempt of court. But as I say, 16 arrests yesterday made and 2 today. But of course, this is still causing traffic across the M25, and it has been for the 3rd day running.
Theo, thank you very much for keeping us up to date. Now, we'll continue to do that and bring you Prime Minister's questions live here on GB News, so don't miss that. Now, though, back to Beverly.
Good morning. Thank you for joining me. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. If you're just joining us, in the studio with me are Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republican Overseas UK, Emma Burnell, political consultant, and of course GB News regular Tonya Buxton. Now, I want to hear from you as well. Get in touch as usual on gbviews@gbnews.uk. So I'm a big fan of people standing up for what they believe in. We need more of that, don't we? But the antics of Just Stop Oil over recent days are dangerous and disruptive. There's been increasingly extreme protests, with the M25 closed intermittently thanks to the hysteria of these hooligans. And I worry that these lunatics are causing so much disruption that they will trigger greater powers to be given to the police that could affect all of us. Now, chaos only began last month, so let's have a look back at what's happened so far. The last 3 days, they've caused disruption on the M25. They've sprayed paint on Tufton Street, which is the Westminster address of many right-wing think tanks. They have scaled and managed to close off the Dartford Bridge. And they threw soup at Van Gogh's famous Sunflowers painting at the National Gallery. So am I missing something here? Joining us now is Alex de Koning, a Just Stop Oil spokesperson. Alex, thank you for joining me. I don't know whether you've seen the latest headlines, and we don't know the details as yet, but it looks like, looking at the headlines, it says an eco-mob are putting lives at risk because Just Stop Oil have caused an M25 motorway pile-up after a police motorbike rider responded to the protest, and it caused a crash between two lorries. It was only a matter of time, wasn't it, before you lot caused something like this?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Alex, I'm 24, I'm a climate scientist. And yeah, you're right, this is terrible. I was really dreading the day something like this would happen. Yeah, it's terrible.
But you presumably, your organisation need to take some responsibility. If a person has been hurt because of your protests, that is with you.
I'm really sorry to anyone who's been caught up in this, and it's terrible what's happening. You're right.
Is that it? Is that all you have to say in this situation? If there are people in hospital this morning because of you lot trying to make a point that very few people in this country, I must say, agree with you and are supporting you with, is that literally all you have to say?
Seeing more action.
Pardon?
So many people agree with us, you're right, but then why aren't we seeing more action? This is COP27. Last year at COP26, there wasn't even a mention of oil and gas in the final deal. We need climate action, and that's why we're doing this, because we care about people. We really do, and that's why we're trying to defend the future of all life on Earth, really, by doing whatever we can.
The absolute irony of saying that you care about people when there are thousands of people sat on roads up and down the country, particularly around London, actually, at the moment, trying to get to hospital appointments, trying to get home to see their children. You know, the fact that you are basically passing this off as some sort of compassionate act leaves most of us absolutely furious. Do you understand the impact you're having in terms of encouraging people to push back against you?
Of course we understand that. And this is, as I say, this is terrible. I would be furious too if I was caught up in that traffic, if I missed a funeral or an appointment. I would be furious. But the real question needs to be asking is, why are people taking actions like this? Why are doctors, nurses, grandparents, students, teachers, bartenders, why are they doing this?
Well, I would ask, why do you feel you are self-appointed saviours of the world when we don't need you to save us?
We're not self-appointed saviours of the world. We're just ordinary people that are trying to make a difference. And Just Stop Oil, I have a friend who's a doctor who sees children dying from fossil fuels air pollution almost every other day. I have another friend who's a paramedic who goes and sees people dying from the cold and just turns up and they're just sitting in their armchair. It's awful. I have another friend who's a farmer who's seen crops literally go on fire during the heat wave. We need change. These are ordinary people who are seeing the faces of the climate crisis right now.
Alex, can I just ask you, because I've seen a lot of you lot be interviewed, and I have so many questions. Like, who are you in real life? You call yourself a climate scientist, but what do you do? How do you have the time to be doing this? Where do you live? What's your job?
So I'm doing my PhD in green hydrogen production at Newcastle University. I've taken several months out of that PhD to do this full time because what we do as scientists means very little if the government's not willing to implement it.
So green hydrogen is one of the, what you would want to take over from our fossil fuels, right? And that will become a very lucrative business for you one day, Alex.
It may well do, but in all honesty, we need more renewable energy than we need green hydrogen. We need tidal power, we need insulation, we need subsidized public transport, we need to be taxing the big oil polluters. There are so many solutions out there, and the government are just not using them. So that's why there's only one solution that really matters, and that's mass civil resistance.
Well, I can tell you that you do not have the support of the country. And what you're doing in terms of protesting in this way means that you are very likely to encourage the police to take on greater powers to stop all protests. And that is going to affect all of us in a way that does not necessarily, is not necessarily worse than what you're talking about with the climate. But anyway, Alex, thank you. Alex de Koning, the Just Stop Oil spokesperson, and a boy with a lot of time on his hands. Is your blood boiling, Greg?
Yeah. Yeah,
it's the arrogance. It's the self, the sort of, the fact that they believe they're doing this for our own good. Emma, you're sorry. Go on.
I didn't say anything. But
no, I know. I can go on. Go on, Emma. Tell us.
I mean, I completely agree with Alex on the designation of what the issue is. I do believe that we need to do a great deal more to solve the climate crisis, and I think that action has been slow and needs to be ramped up. My question is, there is a concept in campaigning. As a consultant, I talk to organisations about this all the time, called theory of change. You say, we are going to take this action, we believe it will have these outcomes, and that will lead to this change. What I'm not seeing in these protests is that theory of change. Why stopping traffic on the M25 will lead to what needs to happen, which is essentially international legislative change. He said there the solution is mass civil disobedience. That's not the solution. It may be a tool, but it's not a solution. A solution is legislative change that creates better environment for renewables to come on board, almost certainly a nuclear baseline, something I've massively changed my mind on in my lifetime. And just so I do believe in all the things Alex believes in. I just don't believe in his method.
But by taking these measures, Tonya, the only legislative change we will see, the government aren't going to sit around and go, oh, yeah, these guys have got a point. Yeah, we need more green energy. Yeah, they've got a point. The only legislative change will be about clamping down on protesters, and we never know when we might need those powers.
Absolutely. But the point is that these guys do damage. You know, they are doing criminal damage. They are affecting people's lives. I mean, when I was protesting, it was the first time I protested during lockdown. I did it, and I did it peacefully. I didn't affect anybody. I wasn't destroying anyone's property. I wasn't smashing windows. And the reality is you know, they are insisting on something that is not set. You know, the kind of human carbon emissions on extreme weather is not set science. We're being sold it's set science. I'd like to have more of a conversation about that to decide whether that's the truth or not. We're just told one thing, we have to obey, and they are these. Well, Alex sitting there from his little student dorm or his mum's bedroom or wherever they are, these people, how can they afford to be able to protest in this way when people can't heat their houses because of what they're doing now?
Greg?
They have he and they, I'll just say generally, have no compassion for people who are actually suffering because their fake crisis has created a real crisis. And it does have an effect on government. And you saw Boris and his lot running around COP26 so proudly. Well, they banned fracking. They've made all kinds of legislation that has hurt the people that they're actually representing. This happened as well in the U.S. with, you know, the permits and canceling Keystone Pipeline. The policies have created and made an energy crisis. Now we're in the midst of it. We can thank Angela Merkel for selling out the Germans to the
Putin's probably got a little bit to do with it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that people like to blame Putin.
Yeah, they do.
Well, because he's cut off all our gas.
We get 2% from Putin.
Yes, but Biden and Jake Sullivan, his national security advisor, were in Russia in 2021 begging Putin to pump more oil.
Yeah, that's wrong. I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm not that partisan that I'm going to say that's a good thing to do. The truth is, whatever part of the spectrum you, fossil fuels are by their nature are going to run out. That's just true. Renewables will not run out by their nature. So we are going to, at some point, transition. Well, they work quite well, actually. And,
they don't work.
They work extraordinarily well. We need the baseline of nuclear to make sure, because they are variable. But they by their nature, they don't run out. We are going to have to transition. So the question is when and how we do that and how we manage that transition.
Well, there's many frustrating things, but one of them is the fact that this is not a conversation that we've really had about the planet, about is there a genuine climate emergency? That seems to be decided without us actually being involved in that. And when I say a genuine climate emergency, I can see you raising your hand. What I mean by that, Emma, is how much of our global warming is man-made carbon? I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, people have been talking about that for 20, most of my lifetime. I'm 47 and we've been having this conversation since I was a teenager.
It's not underwater yet. When they were talking about this, New York's not underwater. We still have...
We need climate thinking. We need climate...
New York may not be underwater, but the Thames Barrier is being used 5 times more than it was ever designed to be done so. And so actually these things are happening.
Yes,
and also
my flat
does change. It does change.
We all want clean water. We want clean air. We all agree on that. Do you know what I really want? I want less plastic. I want less plastic in the ocean.
Oh my goodness.
I want cleaner riverways. I don't want the air to be polluted.
I don't think it's a choice though. But you don't choose renewables or clean plastic.
No, but that should be the thing that we can actually do, that we know for a fact is damaging the planet. We know it's damaging.
We know all of this for a fact is damaging. We do know it for a fact. Yes, we do.
We don't.
And the more we pretend that we don't, the more we look stupid.
Know that for a fact. And if you really want to make a difference in climate change, then it's China that you need to be talking to.
Well, absolutely. I don't disagree with that.
So this stopping people getting to hospital.
As I say, I don't agree with the tactics, but there's a difference between the tactics and the facts.
I have no time for us paying reparations at the moment, several hundred millions of pounds, to developing, in inverted commas, countries because of the damage we have done to the climate, when I think we're responsible for about, less than 1% of carbon dioxide kicked out into the atmosphere.
It's silliness. It's virtue signaling gone wild. This poor kid wants to have more insulation. Guess how you make insulation? With natural gas and oil. So it's silly. And this is what happens when you let people who are not thinking through these issues and have no compassion for the people, the 500 million people in Africa that don't have electricity, and then they want to protest because they're developing natural gas in Mozambique. I mean, it's silly. So, they should have a voice because they're young and they're passionate.
Absolutely.
But not
do
to
that
close
safely.
down roads.
And they are losing, even if you're on your side, Emma, and believe that the climate crisis is real and it's happening and it's urgent, they are losing the hearts and minds.
No, I don't disagree with you on that. It is about tactics, but solidly, I would like to see better tactics. I've always believed it's about expanding the group of people who agree with each other rather than detracting it.
Right, OK, stay with us. More on this after the break. Plus your views, what do you think about the protesters? Stay with us. Here's the weather.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Sunny spells for many today. There are some showers around, but many places won't see them and stay dry, and it is less windy than it has been. Although don't get used to that. More low pressure systems ganging up out in the Atlantic. Very mild and windy for the next couple of days. Out there today, there are a couple of weather fronts just really bringing a few more showers to certain parts of the UK. So northern England, South Wales, southwest England, a few showers perhaps drifting into the Midlands later this afternoon. Certainly plenty of showers coming in across northern Scotland. But in between these showery zones, many places will stay dry and bright with some good spells of sunshine. It is a little breezy, but nothing like what we've seen of late. It's still pretty mild as well, with temperatures above average, but again, it is going to get milder still as we go towards the end of the week. Tonight we'll see more rain coming into western Scotland, a pretty wet night here. Elsewhere, some drizzly and damp conditions over the hills of Wales and northwest England. But for many, it'll be a dry night, predominantly cloudy night. We could dip down to single figures early on, but generally by dawn, most places will be in double digits. A windy day then to come on Thursday, a mostly dry and cloudy day. The main exception to that will be the northwest of Scotland, where it'll be very windy, but also very wet. That rain really building up, particularly for Skye and Lewis. Apart from a bit of drizzle elsewhere over hills, many places will be fine, and across East Anglia in the southeast, reasonably bright, and everywhere it is going to be mild, with temperatures 15, 16, perhaps 17 degrees Celsius. But it will be blustery, gusty winds, especially in the far northwest, where the rain will pep up once more on Thursday evening, perhaps pushing into parts of Northern Ireland too. Again, for most of England and Wales, staying largely dry, but it will continue to be blustery as we head into Friday. Into the weekend, the winds ease, which means it could turn quite foggy, and all the while it stays very mild.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, it's 11:25 on Wednesday morning. You are watching Bev Turner today, and thank you if you're listening to us also on your radio. Now, in the last hour, King Charles and the Queen Consort have had eggs thrown at them as huge crowds gathered in York during an official visit. I'm hoping we're going to get some footage of this. We're not sure at the moment. This is a very unusual situation, Tonya. Why would this happen now, do you think? Is this an acceptable form of protest?
No, it just isn't, and it takes away from real forms of protest, and it sickens me. I mean, I gather that none of the eggs hit, so that's...
Here we are. We're looking at the pictures here. So they were at an appointment in York. Somebody's tried to throw eggs. If you listen to us on the radio, it looks like they didn't actually hit them. There are a crowd of people behind a barricade, and he was walking around, as they do, in front of the crowd. Somebody obviously tried to throw some eggs. They didn't make contact. And then you've got 6 police officers wrestling somebody to the ground. It's surprising in a way, Greg, given how public-facing our royal family are and how little security they have around. I know, of course, they have security, but there are still members of the public less than a foot away from them. It's surprising this kind of thing doesn't happen more often.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it doesn't. And also, a lot of the protesters are the types that would be prone to throw an egg at someone important would probably agree with King Charles on his climate issues. You know, back to our last topic. You know, I would expect a climate fanatic to throw eggs at certain politicians on the right who don't agree with their climate views. But King Charles is about as close to a climate change fan as anyone.
There's something in the air, though, Emma, isn't there? About protest, about people wanting to feel that they've got a right, maybe.
I think there really is. I mean, I think there's a real sense that people feel disempowered, whether that's on the right with things like lockdown and COVID and what have you, or whether that's on the left with climate and inequality. I think there's a real sense that people are just feeling so, not just frustrated, I think we've gone through frustration and out the other side, so real kind of bleak sense that there's nothing you can do, so do something nihilistic.
Yeah.
I mean, ironically, next to Greg, I'm a Republican, but with a very small R, I hasten to add. On this particular individual thing, I'm just one big, massive shrug. But I do think you're right that it does speak to a wider sense that people have, that there isn't something that they can do to change the wider, the deeper, the structural problems that we're having. And so you will do something small and nihilistic instead.
Let's go to some of our views that you've been sending in. Chris from Wiltshire says, I get so angry when I see these little students with bees in their bonnets disrupting the lives of many people. They run the risk of being attacked by other members of the public as people have had enough. This is what you were saying, Tanya. I always think it's interesting when you see these protesters like we just saw there. That's why I wanted to know who he is, because in a way they're kind of anonymous, angry, little young kind of agitators.
Snotty little gits is what I'd call them.
Snotty little gits.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll have that on his CV. Are we surprised by that when we see that's who they are, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think they fit a classic remit, isn't it? You know, if you're not a socialist when you're a student, and if you're not, conservative when you get older, you've got no sense. You've got no heart or no sense. But I'm not surprised by it. But it really, we have to start drawing a line. There has to be a very firm line. So we must be able to protest because, like you said, otherwise we feel powerless. We're all sickened by the people that are governing us. Doesn't matter what side you're on. I'm sick of all of them.
Yeah.
So you need to feel that you have the right to protest. But it has to be protest that is not causing criminal damage, which is not blocking roads and could be, as we've seen now with the policemen having accidents and things like that. And what they're doing by throwing eggs is such a pathetic thing to do. It's so beyond childish, pathetic.
I don't know, it's classic British protest, though, isn't it?
No,
We've been throwing eggs for hundreds of years. It's always been, from way back, like when people were in the stocks and you threw vegetables at them.
Well, thank goodness it was just
it's a bit silly. Yeah. It's the kind of silly protest that we do. I am, whilst being a Republican, I'm also completely non-violent.
Yeah.
So I don't want to see anybody getting hurt through protests. And it does worry me that there could be an escalation. But I think throwing eggs is a fairly standard British, it's almost traditional.
In a way, eggs and flour. Clive has said, every time these idiots block the roads, I drive faster and I turn up my thermostat. That's what we were saying. They are losing support for their cause. If that's their intention, they're doing a great job. Right, we're going to return to the midterm elections in just a moment. Is this the start of a Trump comeback, or do the results favour anti-woke campaigner Ron DeSantis? And I wonder what he meant by that. That's after this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. A man's been detained by police after throwing eggs at King Charles and the Queen Consort in York. The incident happened as they arrived at York Minster to unveil a statue of the late Queen Elizabeth. It's understood a protester threw 3 eggs at them, all of which missed before the royal couple were escorted off. You can see it in sort of just the top right-hand corner of the pictures we're showing you now. We've slowed down the images and there went the egg. Several police officers at Micklegate Bar were seen restraining a suspect on the ground immediately after the incident. Now, results for the US midterms are being declared this morning, with some states still too close to call. If the Democrats lose either the House or the Senate, that enables the Republicans to limit President Joe Biden's ability to pass laws. Well, results out so far show that Republicans are on course to gain control of the House of Representatives. The race for the Senate, though, currently at a knife edge, and it could be days before the final results are announced because of the high number of postal votes. Rishi Sunak will likely be challenged in the Commons shortly during Prime Minister's questions after the Cabinet Minister, Sir Gavin Williamson, resigned last night. Sir Gavin said allegations of bullying and his conduct are becoming a distraction to the good work of the government. The MP left his post after further allegations emerged last night. Sir Gavin denies any wrongdoing. The Prime Minister will face questions during Prime Minister's questions over his decision to reinstate him as a minister, Sir Gavin, despite being made aware of a complaint against him. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, said Sir Gavin did the right thing. A police officer's been injured after responding to a climate protest on the M25 this morning. Essex Police said there was a collision between a motorbike and 2 lorries in a rolling roadblock that had been imposed because of an activist on the motorway. It's the third day of action on the UK's busiest road. Just Stop Oil say around 10 of its supporters climbed onto overhead gantries today in multiple locations along the motorway. 2 arrests have been made. You're up to date. We'll bring you Prime Minister's questions here on GB News, but we're on your TV, online and your DAB Plus radio.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:35. This is Bev Turner Today on GB News. We're going to talk about Trump in just a moment with the midterms going on. But first of all, is your idea of a cruise heaven or hell? Some predicted that the cruise industry would never recover after the pandemic, with all those holidaymakers jostling at the buffet. But the icon of the seas, there she is, nicknamed the human lasagna because of its layers of people on top of one another, goes on its maiden cruise in 2024. If you're listening on the radio, I apologise, but just imagine an enormous ship which has an outdoor swimming pool on the top. It has several outdoor swimming pools. It looks like a cross between Las Vegas and Butlins is the best way to describe it. Tonya, would you go on a cruise? Is this your idea of heaven or hell?
Well, I thought it was my idea of hell, but I went and worked on a cruise for a few nights recently. I won't name who, and it was divine. I had a lovely time. It was fantastic.
Maybe you're just getting to that certain age,
Maybe I am getting to that certain age. I might be. I mean, the thing about that, if I was young and that type of cruise where you could see it's kind of like loads of young people, they're all together.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the appeal of it. It wouldn't have appealed to me when I was younger because I was just wanted to search out different places.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of being stuck on this. But I think as you get older, there's a safety element, especially with some of the kind of more highbrow cruises, where I get it.
Just to let our viewers know that Tanya Buxton is the one person who tells me off every time I do that with my glasses. And she says, you look really old, take them off the top of your head. What she doesn't know is I actually want to wear them on a chain around.
No, never.
But clearly it's an age thing, Emma, a little bit, isn't it, cruises?
I mean, it certainly always has been traditionally. My parents have started going on cruises in the last few years, which I just find baffling. It's not for me. But then there are cruises that are very much marketed at me. There are cruises with, say, for example, bands from when I was a teenager, and they all go out on these cruise boats. But I just find the idea of not being able to get out just horrific.
Have you done a cruise, Greg?
Of course not.
Sorry. I'm sorry that you're actually offended by the question.
To me, it's like going on a bus tour. I just can't do it. And I'm also very tall. And it's...
I don't think that's a limiting factor.
I think I'd be hitting my head all the time in the cabins or something.
Yeah, I did. So when my then husband had an accident about 12 years ago now, a newspaper sent us on a cruise to recover, but he'd had a very bad head injury, and being locked in a cabin with a man who's had he doesn't even remember it. It was a complete waste of money, really, from the newspaper's point of view. He doesn't even remember being there. But I knew that I'd hit a low when a piece of paper got pushed under the door that said the activities for the day involved scarf tying on deck 3. Scarf tying on deck 3. Wow. So I could have gone and learnt how to tie a scarf. But there's something about it, and maybe it is just that I'm getting old, the idea of just sitting on a chair, maybe on a balcony, read a book. The food, Tanya Buxton, on a cruise. That's your area of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The one I was on, the food was completely superior. It was fantastic. And the thing is, though, apart from kind of getting where they need to go, you're very rarely travelling during the day overseas. So you kind of arrive at a destination, you can all get off.
Yeah.
You know, I got off in Crete, I got off in Mykonos, I got off in...
Yeah, but you have to get back on.
You do.
If we charter a yacht and sail around the islands in Greece, does that count as a cruise? Or do you have to
I
go
did
on
that too.
Carnival
Very
or
different
Norwegian?
experience.
If you are going to do that, you want Tanya as your chef, that's all I'm saying. Now, normally we don't care that much about the American midterm elections, other than they give us an indication of what might happen in a main election. But this time we do, and it's mainly because of two men. The elections were supposed to be the start of Donald Trump as the comeback kid and his run for the White House in 2024, but he's got to take on Ron DeSantis. The Florida governor was re-elected and is now at least as popular, if not more popular than Trump, to take the Republican nomination. DeSantis has declared war on woke. Let's have a listen.
We have embraced freedom. We have maintained law and order. We have protected the rights of parents. We have respected our taxpayers, and we reject woke ideology. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
Florida is where woke goes to die, Greg Swinson. What does he mean by that?
Well, and it has in many respects. But what he means is radical left progressive ideology or policies will not work in Florida. The state is now a red state. There was only one statewide office held by a Democrat, and it was some kind of agriculture position. That was flipped to a Republican this morning or yesterday. So, the wokeism is basically his way of summarizing that, radical progressive left policies that have been executed in California and Illinois and New York. Look how they're working out. And he has said no. It's fantastic to watch. And by the way, he articulated it very well, not with the woke comes to die line, although that was catchy and would be a great campaign line, but just by arguing that parents need to be respected. And that's the kind of woke, so he's done a great job. I mean, this goes back to the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which was the wokest thing ever. And he just said, uncle. No.
So this is my concern, Emma. I don't really use the word woke, even though we hear it a lot, because I don't really know what I mean by that. And I don't like to use words that I don't really understand the definition of. For me, personally, what does it mean to you?
I mean, I think there is an issue with the word woke because it can be a catch-all term for people who don't like anything to say, oh, that's woke.
Yeah.
I don't personally define as woke, though I very much define as politically correct. And that's
left. So in fact,
and left wing, very left wing. I am Greg's worst nightmare. I believe everything Greg hates. But what I personally, the difference for me is that I believe that my role as a left-wing commentator, as a left-wing person, is to try and persuade people of my arguments. I think quite often when somebody is what would be traditionally defined as woke, what they try to do is shut down arguments and say, we are right, you are wrong, and there is nothing to be discussed about that. I don't find that persuasive. I think that I want people to agree with me rather than to be silenced if they don't agree with me. And that's where I see the difference. That's why I come on a space like this that isn't traditionally left-wing and say, these are my arguments. Some people out there may hate me for them. I know they do because I get the tweets, thank you. But other people might think, hey, maybe Emma's got a point. I'd be interested in that.
If we're going to move humanity on in any sort of evolutionary and ideological way, we need to have these conversations, Tonya. What does woke mean to you? And what do you think Ron DeSantis was saying when he said that?
So woke to me means I'm going to be irritated. So anything that's woke, I know, will irritate me.
Isn't that what Emma just said?
She did say that. And the thing is, for me, what I find is that the woke agenda is the cancel culture.
Yeah.
The woke agenda that's happened is what means that, you know, we're not sitting on any of the mainstream television channels having these conversations because they're not allowed anymore. All you see on mainstream television now is a load of people who... their opinions change by degree, but there's no opposition, there's no conversation, there's no Emma and there's no Greg together.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen, it's not allowed. And that's what wokeism for me has done. You know, a woman is whatever they say it is, and that's it. No, you don't agree with what I'm saying, then you're cancelled and we're going to be aggressive to you. That's what I find wokeism is.
Emma, what's the difference, do you think, between being politically correct and being woke? Because in a way, for me, woke is an evolution and a kind of bastardisation of the concept of political correctness.
I think political correctness, for me, is about saying, I have this set of beliefs that I believe are fair and right, and I wish to persuade you of them. Woke is saying, you are wrong and therefore must be left out of society. And I think when you tell people they do not belong in society, and that's quite a large group of people, you just create bigger problems for the very agenda that you're trying to pursue.
When political correctness first came on the scene, Greg, about 25 years ago, it was really just about language. It started in the universities, as so many of these things do, right? And it started that language had to represent our reality. So women didn't have to take misses if they got married, and we're OK with that now, right?
Yeah.
And if a chair of a meeting isn't always a man because times have moved on, you say the chair of the meeting rather than the chairman. OK, nothing to be too scared of. But woke has somehow become aggressive and as Emma says, it shuts people down, but it is still in the language.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone from having relatively harmless arguments about language, congresswoman, congressman, whatever, to, you know, a 6'3" swimmer at the University of Pennsylvania swimming on the women's swim team, and after changing his or her name. I'll get some Twitter hate just for saying his, her. I think that, you know, this is much more serious than the choice of words or language and the insanity even around that, you know, where I see people that are properly educated and working at real places having his/her or whatever, you know, his, her, or whatever, on their email signature.
It comes back to our discussion earlier about mental health and boys and men, and the fact that we've gone for this sort of non-gendered hegemony across the world, and you've all got to be the same, and it isn't working, Tonya.
I have a friend who works in the theatre who sunk into depression. I'm not going to mention her name because she got somebody's pronouns wrong, and the hate that was afforded to her was so sinister. She got so low about it. So it is quite a sinister thing. You're sitting there thinking, what am I doing now? And it is affecting people's mental health. It's gone too far.
I think there's a vast
mental health today has been lifted by this show and by my fantastic panel. Thank you all. We could have gone on all day. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. with Bev Turner today. Have a great day.
Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Sunny spells for many today. There are some showers around, but many places won't see them and stay dry, and it is less windy than it has been. Although don't get used to that. More low pressure systems ganging up out in the Atlantic. Very mild and windy for the next couple of days. Out there today, there are a couple of weather fronts just really bringing a few more showers to certain parts of the UK. So northern England, South Wales, southwest England, a few showers perhaps drifting into the Midlands later this afternoon. Certainly plenty of showers coming in across northern Scotland. But in between these showery zones, many places will stay dry and bright with some good spells of sunshine. It is a little breezy, but nothing like what we've seen of late. It's still pretty mild as well, with temperatures above average, but again, it is going to get milder still as we go towards the end of the week. Tonight we'll see more rain coming into western Scotland, a pretty wet night here. Elsewhere, some drizzly and damp conditions over the hills of Wales and northwest England. But for many, it'll be a dry night, predominantly cloudy night. We could dip down to single figures early on, but generally by dawn, most places will be in double digits. A windy day then to come on Thursday, a mostly dry and cloudy day. The main exception to that will be the northwest of Scotland, where it'll be very windy, but also very wet. That rain really building up, particularly for Skye and Lewis. Apart from a bit of drizzle elsewhere over hills, many places will be fine, and across East Anglia in the southeast, reasonably bright. And everywhere it is going to be mild, with temperatures 15, 16, perhaps 17 degrees Celsius. But it will be blustery, gusty winds, especially in the far northwest, where the rain will pep up once more on Thursday evening, perhaps pushing into parts of Northern Ireland too. Again, for most of England and Wales, staying largely dry, but it will continue to be blustery as we head into Friday. Into the weekend, the winds ease, which means it could turn quite foggy, and all the while it stays very mild.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
Me, Mark Longhurst, and shortly we're bringing you Prime Minister's questions live from the Commons. But first, let's update you on that breaking news with the King and Queen Consort in York being attacked by a protester who threw eggs at the royal couple. Now, they were entering the city at Micklegate Bar. That's the traditional place where the monarch enters the historic city. That's the royal limousine then, when the protester aimed 2 eggs at the royal couple, shouting, "Britain is built on the blood of slavery." Well, we can tell you the eggs missed. The protester was then detained while the crowd booed, shouting, "Shame on you" and "God save the King." We're being told that the royal couple were ushered away and they were unhurt, but the scenes witnessed by our royal correspondent Cameron Walker will be speaking to him live in York shortly, and of course now all the security concerns as preparations are underway for the coronation of the King next year. But first, let's also introduce our two MPs joining us for PMQs. Labour MP for Birmingham Selly Oak, Steve McCabe, and Conservative MP for Northampton South, Andrew Lewis. Gentlemen, thank you for both being with us today. The politics in a moment, but first, your reaction to what we're learning from York with this incident of, I know it's just eggs, but clearly a very worrying time.